The metronome was the first thing Bruce Lee noticed. It sat on a piano near the back wall, ticking slowly, stubbornly, almost proudly. Every click seemed to say the same thing. Slower, slower, slower. The old master who owned the room believed that rhythm could civilize speed. That morning, he intended to civilize Bruce Lee. The room was not a fighting arena. It was a rehearsal hall behind a Chinese cultural center with cracked wooden floors, paper fans on the wall, a row of straight-back chairs, and sunlight coming through dusty windows. Men came there to practice forms, teach children, drink tea, and argue quietly about what martial arts was becoming in America. The old master's name was Liang Wen in this story. He was fictional, but the type is familiar. Thin, upright, silver-haired, dignified, with hands that shook slightly when pouring tea but became steady when correcting a student's stance. He had survived enough years to distrust anything that looked impatient. Ling respected discipline above excitement. He believed a movement should be understood before it was admired. He believed young men confused speed with achievement because speed attracted applause before wisdom had time to inspect it. When Bruce was invited to demonstrate that morning, Liang had already decided what he would say. Bruce arrived without noise, wearing simple dark clothes and carrying no performance with him. A few younger students straightened instantly. Some had heard stories about his hands, his kicks, his screen tests, his sudden movements. Liang watched those students watch Bruce, and that bothered him more than Bruce himself. The old master feared what admiration could do to young men. Admiration can lift a student, but it can also make him impatient with the slow work that creates anything worth admiring. Liang saw the students' eyes following Bruce and thought, "They want the flash. They do not yet want the years." Bruce bowed to Liang with genuine respect. Not exaggerated respect, not the theatrical kind young men sometimes use when they want elders to bless their rebellion. It was clean, complete, and quiet. Liang returned the bow. For a moment, the room held two kinds of authority facing each other. Age earned through years and presence earned through pressure. The host asked Bruce to demonstrate interception and economy of motion. Bruce nodded and chose a volunteer, a strong young student named Aaron, who looked proud enough to want success and nervous enough to deserve kindness. Bruce asked him to attack slowly first. Liang approved of that. Slowly was safe. Slowly was visible. Slowly could be judged. Aaron stepped in with a straight punch. Bruce touched the line, shifted, and stopped near the ribs. The room saw it clearly. Liang nodded once. Good structure, he thought. Then Aaron attacked faster. Bruce answered faster. The movement became smaller. The third time, when Aaron came with real speed, Bruce seemed almost not to move at all. The students gasped. Liang did not. He lifted one hand and said, "Too fast." The words cut the room more sharply than criticism should have. The young students looked from Liang to Bruce, waiting to see whether the old man had just challenged the young one or corrected him. Bruce turned toward Liang. His face remained calm. That mattered. A younger man addicted to admiration might have smiled, defended himself, or demonstrated harder. Bruce did none of those things. He simply asked, "Too fast for what?" The question was respectful, but it was not submissive. Liang walked toward the center with the slow care of a man whose body had become economical in a different way. "Too fast for teaching," he said. "Too fast for understanding. Too fast for the students who will copy the outside and miss the inside." Several older men nodded. The young students looked embarrassed. The criticism was not foolish. That made it dangerous. Liang was not mocking Bruce. He was protecting the students from worshiping the visible result. He had seen many young men chase speed and lose patience, chase power and lose softness, chase reputation and lose character. His concern came from responsibility, not jealousy. Bruce understood that. He looked at Aaron, then at the younger students along the wall. "You are right," Bruce said. The room did not expect that. Liang did not expect it either. A proud man treats correction as attack. A serious man looks for the truth inside it before defending himself. But Bruce continued, "You are right that they may copy the outside." He raised his hand slowly. "But if I slow down the wrong thing, I teach a lie." The room shifted. Liang's eyes sharpened. The conversation had moved from manners into principle. Liang pointed to the metronome on the piano. "Then let us find the correct speed." He walked over, wound it with 2 fingers, and set the tempo low. Tick, tick, tick. Each sound landed on the wooden floor like a rule. Move with this, he said. Some students smiled. The situation seemed almost humorous. Bruce Lee, the man they had heard, was too fast for cameras, being asked to obey a metronome. Bruce did not laugh. He stepped back onto the floor and nodded to Aaron. Attack on the click, he said. Aaron attacked on the click. Bruce responded on the click. Everything was visible now. The shift, the hand, the angle, the stop. Liang nodded. Better, he said. The students relaxed. They could see the movement. They could name it. They could imagine copying it. That was exactly what worried Bruce. Again, Bruce said. Aaron attacked. Bruce moved on the click again, but this time he exaggerated the response slightly so everyone could follow. Liang nodded more firmly. There, he said. Now it can be learned. Bruce looked at him. Now it can be imitated, he answered. That answer brought the room back to tension. Imitation is not learning, though beginners often need imitation to begin. The danger comes when imitation becomes the destination. Bruce had no hatred for basics. He hated the moment a student copied the shape and believed he had captured the truth. Liang turned off the metronome. The sudden absence of ticking made the room feel larger. Show me the difference, he said. Not angrily, seriously. That was the first sign that the morning could become useful. Liang was not defending pride anymore. He was asking for evidence. Bruce asked Aaron to attack naturally, not slowly, not recklessly, just honestly. Aaron looked at Liang. Liang nodded. The young man breathed, stepped in, and punched with the rhythm his body actually wanted to use. Bruce responded. The stop appeared before Aaron's punch had finished becoming a punch. Liang's face changed, not dramatically. Old men who have spent a lifetime controlling themselves do not give their reactions away cheaply. But his eyes narrowed, not in suspicion now, but in study. He had seen the speed. More importantly, he had seen the absence of hurry. That was the key. Bruce had not rushed. His body had simply removed delay. The difference is difficult to explain to people who worship visible effort. Rushing is tension trying to arrive early. Speed is unnecessary movement removed until arrival becomes natural. Bruce stepped back. If I slow down the result, he said, they may see the shape. But if they think the shape is the movement, they will be late when it matters. Liang folded his hands behind his back. The room waited. This was no longer old versus young. It was responsibility versus responsibility. Liang asked Aaron to attack Bruce again. This time Liang watched Bruce's feet instead of his hands. That choice revealed his skill. Beginners watch hands. Experienced men watch the source of decision. Bruce's foot adjusted before the arm moved. The hand seemed fast because the body had already chosen. Liang walked closer. Your hand is not fast first, he said. Bruce nodded. No. The old master looked at the students. Did you hear that? He asked. His hand is not fast first. The students became still because the correction came from Liang now, not Bruce. Bruce respected that. He did not interrupt to own the lesson. A man with real self-respect does not need every truth to be credited to his mouth. If the room learned better because Liang said it, that was enough. Bruce's purpose was not to defeat the old master. It was to make the lesson honest. Liang asked for another attack. Aaron stepped in. Bruce responded. Liang watched the shoulder this time, then the hip, then the breath. Each repetition gave him another piece. The old master began seeing why ordinary slowness could mislead. Bruce's speed was not a layer placed on top. It was the consequence of alignment. So, Liang said, you cannot simply slow it down because the thing becomes another thing. Bruce smiled faintly. Yes. The room heard the old master translate the lesson into language they trusted. The tension softened. Respect did not disappear. It changed direction. But Liang was not finished. Then how do you teach it? He asked. That was the question of a serious teacher. Not can you do it? Not can you impress us? How do you make another person worthy of the movement without giving him a false copy? Bruce looked at the students. You slow down the cause, he said, not the truth. He placed Aaron in stance, adjusted his foot, lowered his shoulder, and relaxed his jaw. You slow down the parts that create the timing. You do not pretend the final timing is something else. Ling listened carefully. The younger students listened differently now. They had expected a clash between old tradition and new speed. Instead, they were seeing two men protect the same thing from opposite dangers. Liang feared shallow imitation of speed. Bruce feared shallow imitation of slowness. That made the lesson adult. It was not about who was right in the childish sense. Both men had brought a real concern. The story became stronger because neither concern was fake. The old master defended depth. Bruce defended honesty under pressure. The room needed both. Bruce asked the students to stand. He separated them into pairs and gave them a simple drill. One step, one line, one response. Slow enough to feel the body, honest enough to avoid sleep. Liang watched with arms folded, but his face had lost some of its earlier resistance. The first pair moved too slowly. Their bodies became ceremonial. Bruce stopped them. "This is dead," he said. Not cruelly, but clearly. Liang did not object. The second pair moved too fast, chasing the image of Bruce's hands. Liang stopped them. "This is empty," he said. The room heard both corrections, and something useful happened. The students realized speed and slowness could both become lies. Slow could become performance. Fast could become vanity. The question was not tempo alone. The question was whether the movement remained connected to purpose. Liang walked to one young student and adjusted his elbow. Bruce adjusted the same student's foot. The boy looked terrified to be corrected by both men. Liang noticed and said, "Do not fear correction. Fear practicing wrong long enough to love it." Bruce looked at him with visible approval. That sentence belonged to the old master, and it was strong. Bruce did not try to improve it. He let it stand. The room had shifted from contest to collaboration. This is how masculine dignity works at its best. Two strong men protecting truth instead of protecting ownership. After several drills, Liang asked Bruce to demonstrate once more at natural speed. This time the students did not gasp. They watched differently. Their eyes did not chase the hand only. They looked at the foot, the hip, the shoulder, the breath, the intention before movement. Bruce moved. The stop appeared again. Still fast, still difficult. But now the difficulty had structure around it. The students were no longer staring at magic. They were seeing work compressed into an instant. That difference mattered. Wonder became responsibility. Liang walked to the metronome and touched it lightly. "This is useful," he said, "but it cannot command the fight." Bruce nodded. Nothing should command the fight except what is true in the moment. The old master looked at him for a long second, then nodded back. One of the older instructors asked whether Bruce believed forms were useless. The question carried old fear. Bruce answered carefully, "No, a form can teach the body. But if the body serves the form forever, the form has become the master." Liang did not disagree. That silence from Liang carried more power than agreement. The room knew he would have corrected Bruce if the answer had been shallow. He did not. The younger students felt permission to respect tradition without becoming trapped inside it. That is a difficult balance and a valuable one. A student asked Liang whether he still thought Bruce was too fast. The room held its breath. The question was dangerous because it invited the old man either to defend his first correction or surrender it completely. Liang did neither. He gave a better answer. "He is too fast for lazy eyes," Liang said. "Not too fast for serious training." The room absorbed that with quiet respect. Bruce lowered his head slightly. That was a beautiful correction because it did not flatter Bruce and did not excuse the students. Liang continued, "If you only admire him, he is too fast. If you train the cause, he becomes a teacher." The line changed the morning. It brought the responsibility back where it belonged. Not on Bruce to become less true, but on the students to become more serious. Bruce picked up a cup of tea from the side table and offered it to Liang before taking his own. Small gestures matter in stories about dignity. He had challenged the old master's method, but he had not challenged his worth. The tea said what a speech would have cheapened. Liang accepted the cup. His hand trembled slightly again, the way it had before the lesson. But now the room saw the trembling differently, not as weakness, as age carried with discipline. Bruce waited until Liang drank first. The students noticed. Respect had become visible without anyone demanding it. During the break, Aaron approached Bruce and asked the question many students wanted answered. Should I train fast or slow? Bruce looked at Liang. Liang looked at Bruce. Both men smiled faintly because the question was honest and incomplete. Bruce answered first. Train slow enough to feel the lie. Liang added, fast enough that the lie cannot hide. Aaron blinked. The two answers did not cancel each other. They completed each other. That was the lesson the whole morning had been moving toward. The students repeated the sentence quietly, some writing it down. Bruce stopped them before it became a slogan. Do not collect words, he said. Test them. Liang nodded. A good sentence is only a door, he added. Walk through or it becomes decoration. The room laughed softly, but it was clean laughter. Not the laughter of mockery, the laughter of people recognizing how quickly humans turn truth into something easier than practice. The men in the room were not fools. They were simply being reminded that every generation tries to escape work through admiration. Liang asked Bruce to teach one more drill. Bruce chose the simplest possible movement, stepping off line before touching the arm. Several students looked disappointed. They had expected something spectacular. Bruce saw the disappointment and said, Good. If this bores you, it means you have not understood it yet. That line landed hard. Adult men in the room appreciated it immediately. Boredom often protects ignorance. A man calls something basic because he cannot yet see what makes it difficult. Liang walked behind the students and watched their feet. Bruce watched their timing. The room began working. For 20 minutes, nobody cared about looking impressive. That may have been the greatest achievement of the morning. The young men stopped trying to imitate Bruce's speed and started trying to find their own delay. The older men stopped defending slow practice and started making sure slow practice stayed alive. Aaron failed again and again. Each failure revealed something smaller, a shoulder rising, a heel lifting, a breath held too early, a jaw tightening before the attack. Bruce corrected him without humiliation. Liang corrected him without softness. The combination gave Aaron something better than encouragement. It gave him direction. Direction is what serious students need more than praise. Praise can feed the image. Direction feeds the work. Bruce and Liang both understood that, though they had arrived from different paths. The old master had protected patience. Bruce had protected honesty. Together, they protected training. Near the end, Liang asked Bruce to move one final time. Natural speed, he said, but explain before you move. Bruce shook his head. If I explain before, they will look where I tell them and miss what actually happens. Liang considered this, then smiled. Then move, Liang said, and I will explain after. Bruce accepted. Aaron attacked. Bruce moved. The stop appeared. The room stayed quiet. Then Liang explained, not the hand, but the preparation. He described the foot, the angle, the breath, the absence of warning. The students listened like men hearing a map after surviving terrain. That was the perfect arrangement. Bruce showed reality. Liang translated it without making it false. Each man did what the other could not do as well in that moment. The students received both pressure and language. That is how a tradition stays alive. Reality first, language second, practice always. The metronome ticked again during the final drill, but now it sounded different. It no longer ruled the room. It supported it. The students used the click to feel their bodies, then moved beyond the click when the attack required it. A tool had been returned to its proper size. Ling looked at the metronome and said, a tool becomes dangerous when it asks to be obeyed forever. Bruce answered, like a style. Some men smiled. Liang did too, but carefully. The joke carried truth, and truth should not be laughed away too easily. The morning ended with bows. Liang bowed to Bruce first. The students saw it and became very still. It was not surrender. It was recognition. Bruce returned the bow with the same seriousness he had shown at the beginning. The circle had closed, but not where it began. Liang spoke to the students before they left. Do not say Bruce Lee is fast as if that explains him, he said. That is lazy admiration. Ask why he is not late. The students looked at Bruce, then at their own feet. That was the correct direction. Bruce added only one sentence. Do not try to be me. Try to remove what makes you late. That sentence carried the adult heart of the lesson. Not worship, not imitation, work. A man worthy of admiration should make you more responsible for yourself, not less. After the students left, Liang and Bruce sat with tea near the piano. The metronome rested silent between them. Ling said, "I thought you were teaching impatience." Bruce answered, "I thought you might be teaching safety that never becomes courage." Both men smiled because both accusations had contained a little truth. That is why the morning mattered. It did not give us a simple winner. It gave us two serious men correcting each other without losing dignity. Liang reminded Bruce that students need steps they can walk. Bruce reminded Liang that steps must eventually lead somewhere real. This is the grounded version of legacy, not a mystical master glowing with impossible speed. A younger man and an older man sharing responsibility for the next generation. One protects honesty under pressure, the other protects depth against shallow imitation. Both are needed. For adult viewers, that is the emotional hook beneath the technique. Every man has been told to slow down by someone older. Sometimes the advice is wisdom, sometimes it is fear disguised as wisdom. The hard part is listening without surrendering your truth and answering without disrespect. Bruce did that. He did not mock Liang. He did not obey blindly. He took the correction seriously, found the truth inside it, then showed where it became incomplete. That is self-respect with discipline, not arrogance, not submission, something harder. Liang did his part too. He did not cling to the first judgment once the evidence changed. That takes strength, especially for an older teacher in front of students. Many men would rather be wrong with authority than corrected with dignity. Liang chose dignity. The story should be remembered for that choice as much as for Bruce's speed. Speed impresses. Dignity teaches. The old master's willingness to adjust gave the students permission to adjust. Bruce's willingness to be corrected gave them permission to respect him more deeply. The metronome remained in the hall long after that morning. Students still used it, but the lesson changed. It no longer meant move slowly because speed is dangerous. It meant understand the rhythm before you break it honestly. That is a very different kind of discipline. Aaron trained differently after that. He stopped asking how to get fast and started asking where he was late. That question matured him. A young man who only wants speed wants a result. A young man who studies lateness is finally looking at the cause. Liang watched him improve slowly. Bruce's lesson had not made the old master obsolete. It had sharpened what he already knew. Good influence does not erase elders. It forces the living part of their teaching to breathe harder. Bruce's influence worked the same way. He did not leave with students chanting his name. He left them with a more difficult relationship to practice. They could no longer admire speed cheaply. They had to earn the right to understand it. That is why this story fits the channel. It has conflict, but not empty conflict. It has respect, but not weak respect. It has a challenge, but the challenge is not only physical. It asks what a man should do when correction comes from someone he respects, but does not fully agree with. The answer is not to fold. The answer is not to attack. The answer is to test. Find the true part. Find the incomplete part. Keep your dignity while separating them. That is an adult code, and Bruce lived it in the way he handled Liang. Liang's first words were, "Too fast." By the end, he had changed them. Too fast for lazy eyes. That change is the story. The old master did not become a fan. He became more precise. Bruce did not become slower. He became better understood. Better understood does not mean simplified. That is important. Bruce's movement remained difficult. It should. Serious skill is difficult, but difficulty no longer looked like magic. It looked like years compressed into economy, an economy made visible through teaching. The young students left with sore legs and fewer fantasies. That is a good ending. A fantasy makes a student feel close to greatness without work. Soreness tells the truth. The body had been given a task, and the task would not flatter them. A few still whispered about how fast Bruce was, but now another student answered, "Watch his feet." That small correction showed the lesson had entered the room. Admiration had shifted from spectacle to study. That is the first step toward maturity. Liang heard the students say it and did not smile until the boy looked away. Old teachers sometimes hide their satisfaction because satisfaction can make students lazy. But his eyes softened. He had wanted to protect them from shallow speed. Now Bruce had helped him do it. Bruce left in the afternoon light, the cultural center quiet behind him. The metronome ticked somewhere inside as another class began. He had not defeated an old master. He had not been defeated by one either. Something better happened. Two standards met and made the room stronger. That is more interesting than a simple victory. A simple victory ends. A stronger room continues. The students would train for months under the echo of that morning. Slow enough to feel the lie. Fast enough that the lie cannot hide. Those words became work. The phrase contains the whole lesson. Slow without honesty becomes dead. Fast without honesty becomes empty. The tempo does not save you. The truth of the movement does. A man must learn to feel when he is pretending at any speed. This applies beyond martial arts. Some men move too fast in life because they are running from patience. Others move too slowly because they are hiding from courage. Wisdom is not always slowing down. Sometimes wisdom is knowing what must not be delayed. Bruce represented that second kind of wisdom, not impatience, but refusal to delay truth. Liang represented the first kind, patience deep enough to prevent foolish speed. The morning worked because neither man allowed his strength to become a prison. That is the masculine dignity inside the story. The younger man does not humiliate the elder. The elder does not crush the younger with tradition. Both stand their ground, test the truth, and leave with respect intact. That is harder than winning applause. The best stories about Bruce Lee should carry that balance. He is a symbol, yes, but not a mystical symbol. He is a symbol of self-command, clarity, courage, and respect under pressure. A man who can be corrected without becoming small and who can correct others without making them small. Liang could have made the morning about authority. Bruce could have made it about speed. Both chose something better, training. That choice is why the story holds. It does not flatter the viewer with fantasy. It challenges him to ask whether his own practice is alive or only familiar. The metronome on the piano becomes the perfect image. At first it tries to slow Bruce down. Then it becomes a teaching tool. Finally it becomes a warning. Do not worship the tool. Use it until the body learns. Then test whether the body can live without it. That is also the story of style, rank, routine, and habit. They begin as tools. They become dangerous when they ask to be obeyed forever. Bruce Lee's philosophy was not against tools. It was against becoming a servant to what should serve you. Liang understood that by the end, though he would never have said it in the same words. He did not need Bruce's language. He had his own. That is respect. Letting another man keep his language while helping him sharpen what it means. The next week, Liang still used the metronome. He still corrected stances. He still made students move slowly until their legs burned. But now at the end of class, he would sometimes clap once and say, "Now do not be late." The students knew what he meant. Aaron became the example. Whenever he rushed, Liang told him he was hiding in speed. Whenever he dragged, Bruce's sentence returned through Liang's mouth. The lie cannot hide. The two teachings braided together until the students no longer knew which man had given which part. That is how influence becomes mature. It stops needing ownership. A lesson belongs to the people who practice it honestly. Bruce had no need to stamp his name on every correction. Liang had no need to deny what Bruce had clarified. The room benefited because both men were larger than their egos. The story ends quietly because the lesson is quiet. No one flies across the room. No one is disgraced. No one throws away tradition. A respected elder says too fast. A younger man answers with respect and evidence. Together they teach the students where real speed is born. Real speed is born before the hand, in the foot that is not late, in the shoulder that does not rise, in the breath that does not panic, in the mind that does not perform. Bruce showed that. Liang made the students slow down enough to see it. That final combination is the point. Bruce alone might have left them impressed. Liang alone might have left them patient, but too safe. Together they gave the room a harder standard. Move truthfully, whether slow or fast, and never confuse visibility with understanding. Adults understand this because life teaches the same lesson. Move too fast and you miss what matters. Move too slowly and the moment passes. The real discipline is not obedience to speed or slowness, it is readiness. Bruce Lee lived readiness. Liang insisted readiness be built, not admired. When the metronome finally stopped, the room did not feel empty. It felt trained. The silence after the last click carried both men's lessons: patience without fear, speed without vanity, respect without submission, correction without humiliation. That is why the old master's first criticism becomes the hook and his final understanding becomes the payoff. He told Bruce Lee to slow down because he feared the students would worship speed. By the end, he saw why Bruce could not simply slow the truth down without changing it. And Bruce, just as importantly, saw why the old master had asked. Not because Liang hated speed, but because he loved training enough to fear shallow admiration. That made the morning worthy of respect. The metronome kept ticking after Bruce left, slower than his hands, slower than his feet, slower than the moment of interception. But now no one mistook the ticking for the truth. It was only a tool. The truth was in the man who knew when to move. Liang later told students that the morning had humbled him in a useful way. He did not say Bruce humbled him. He said the work humbled him. That distinction mattered. A man can resent being humbled by another man. It is harder to resent being humbled by the truth of the work. Bruce would have respected that wording. He did not want personal worship to replace practice. If students left saying Bruce is amazing and nothing else, the morning had failed. If they left asking where their own movement was late, then the morning had done its job. That is the grounded power of the story. It does not require Bruce to be impossible. It requires him to be disciplined enough that his speed becomes evidence of work. It requires Liang to be dignified enough to update his judgment without losing his authority. Both are human. Both are strong. The young students needed to see that. They needed to see a younger man honor an elder without becoming obedient to an incomplete idea. They needed to see an elder accept evidence without becoming small. That is how men learn dignity from other men. Not through slogans, but through conduct under pressure. The morning also warned them against a common trap. Some men hide in slowness and call it depth. Some men hide in speed and call it skill. Both are hiding if the movement cannot answer reality. Bruce and Liang made hiding harder for everyone in the room. A serious student could spend years with that lesson, slow enough to feel the lie, fast enough that the lie cannot hide. It is not only a training instruction, it is a standard for speech, decisions, anger, ambition, and pride. Move truthfully, not merely quickly or slowly. That is why the story should end with the metronome, not with applause. The metronome began as a command. It ended as a reminder. A command tells a man what to do. A reminder asks whether he understands why he is doing it. Bruce Lee walked out without turning the old master into an enemy. Liang stayed without turning Bruce into a threat. The students remained with something better than a winner, a method of judging their own work. That is the kind of ending grown men respect. Because in the end, the master was not wrong to tell Bruce Lee to slow down. He was wrong only when he thought slowness itself would reveal the truth. Bruce was not wrong to move fast. He would have been wrong if he mistook admiration for teaching. Both men corrected the incomplete part of the other man's concern. That is rare. Most arguments defend the incomplete part until respect dies. This one did the opposite. Respect survived because both men cared more about the work than about being seen as the only authority. The final image is simple. The old metronome on the piano. Silent now, sunlight across the wooden floor. Students drilling quietly and two men's standards living in the same room. Slow was still there. Speed was still there. But now truth was in command. That is the lesson. Not slower for comfort, not faster for applause, but honest enough that the movement remains true at any speed. Bruce Lee showed why he could not simply slow down. Master Liang showed why students must still slow down enough to build what speed will later reveal. Liang's students would later argue about which man had taught the greater lesson. The younger ones said Bruce because he showed the result. The older ones said Liang because he made the result teachable. The best answer was that the lesson needed both. Result without teaching becomes admiration. Teaching without result becomes theory. That balance is the reason the story works for adults. It does not ask viewers to worship speed. It asks them to respect the years behind speed and the patience required to build it honestly. Bruce becomes the symbol of what is possible. Liam becomes the warning against wanting possibility without preparation. A young man wants the final moment. A mature man respects the construction. That is the masculine dignity underneath the entire morning. Bruce did not become smaller by listening to Liang. Liang did not become weaker by learning from Bruce. Both men became larger because truth mattered more than posture. The old master's first mistake was understandable. He saw students becoming hypnotized by what they could not yet earn. He tried to slow the danger down. Bruce's answer was equally necessary. If a teacher slows truth until it becomes false, the student learns comfort instead of readiness. So the better lesson was not slow or fast. It was faithful. Be faithful to the cause. Be faithful to the moment. Be faithful to the body's truth. Slow practice should reveal what fast movement will demand. Fast movement should prove whether slow practice has been honest. That principle stayed with Aaron more than the demonstration itself. He began training in layers. First foot, then shoulder, then breath, then intention. Speed was no longer a treasure at the end of a shortcut. It became a consequence of cleaning one small lie after another. Ling noticed the change and said nothing for several weeks. Old teachers sometimes let improvement ripen before they name it. When he finally corrected Aaron, he said, "Now you are not trying to be fast." Good. Aaron remembered that as one of the finest compliments he ever received. Bruce would have understood. The goal was never to look fast. The goal was to be on time. On time can look slow to a panicked man and impossibly fast to a late one. The difference is not magic. It is preparation meeting the moment without apology. That is why the metronome's tick becomes more than sound. It is the old world of measured practice meeting the new demand of honest response. Neither wins by destroying the other. The tool remains, but it stops pretending to be the master. For the viewer, the question is personal. Where have you slowed yourself out of fear and called it wisdom? Where have you rushed out of ego and called it courage? Where are you copying the outside of a stronger man instead of building the cause inside yourself? Those questions make the episode useful beyond martial arts. A father, worker, teacher, athlete, or older man can recognize the same tension. Do not let youth dismiss patience. Do not let age hide behind caution. Do not let admiration replace discipline. Do not let tradition avoid reality. Bruce Lee and Master Liang become two sides of a standard. Move when the moment requires it. Train slowly enough to deserve that movement. Respect elders without surrendering truth. Respect youth without fearing change. That is not mysticism. That is adult strength. The final image should feel quiet, not explosive. The metronome silent, the wooden floor marked by practice, teacups cooling near the piano, and students still drilling after both men are gone. The lesson remains because it has become work, and that is why the old master finally understood. Bruce Lee could not simply slow down because his speed was not hurry. It was the absence of wasted time. But the students still had to slow down because only slow, honest work could teach them what time they were wasting.